It's alive! So my team and I were talking recently, and they said, Erin, you always say it's alive, like Dr. Frankenstein at the beginning of every episode, and I did not realize that I did it every time, which is kind of embarrassing. But now it's a thing, and we have to be here with it. So good morning, everyone. We are live and we are alive on this beautiful fall Saturday morning. And I am, as always, your humble and anxious host, Erin Mahone. And I'm so excited to be here with you today, with my guest today. There's a lot going on in the world, and it feels overwhelming and stressful at times. And I just really want this to be a place where we feel safe and supported in challenging ourselves and one another and the systems within which we operate to be better, to know more, to be more inclusive and safer and more of what we need it to be. And so I know it's hard. I know it's hard to be pushed and to push. It's hard to show up and say, I don't know as much as I want to know. I don't know if I've made mistakes because of that. I don't always know how to respond to the complexity of the world. And that's okay. That's okay. It's okay to show up and not know, and do it through the lens of love and kindness and solidarity, and also, a deep commitment to wanting things to be better, especially for those whose voices are muted, whose experiences are often ignored. And so I'm really excited today to welcome my guest, someone who I have met through the internet, the magnificent and wonderful internet that has connected me to people all over the world. And our guest today is right now the embodiment of, it's not your job to stay quiet so others can remain comfortable. Christy Smith is the founder of the Unmuffled Unbreakable Mama blog, and she openly and lovingly and firmly and powerfully shares her experience as the mother of a child with disabilities, with mental health conditions, and how she has had to learn how to navigate systems and become an advocate for her child and build community around the sacred work of taking care of her kid. And she's a model for us all. So I could not be more thrilled to invite Christy Smith, the Unmuffled Unbreakable Mama, to the show.
Hi, Erin. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to see you. So tell our audience where you are joining me from. I'm here in Portland, Oregon, and you are?
I'm from Wisconsin, from Luck, Wisconsin.
So you are in the tundra, in the cold Wisconsin, not even yet winter, but it's brutal there.
It's just beginning. We had a longer fall and had some warmer weather around for a little while. So now we're just trying to get used to this cold before it hits.
That happened to us here too in the Pacific Northwest. We thought, oh, maybe the rain won't come, and then all of a sudden it just submerged us in it. That wasn't the right word. It descended upon us. Thank you.
Right.
And it's early. So I know that you have some, some prepared stuff that you want to share with us, but can we start out by you just sort of telling us who are you and who were you before you were the unmuffled, unbreakable mama?
So before I became the unmuffled, unbreakable mama, well, let's start from the very beginning. I was one of those young girls that just grew up and had no real career path, no plan, and all I knew is what I wanted to be was a mother, and I wanted a busload of kids. So now I have that busload of kids. I've got 5 kids, and starting from age 9 all the way to 18. And through raising my children, I found out that you can't parent all kids the same way.
That's
And
right.
so that was what began my journey. I am now a blogger. Uh, I've been doing this for a year, and I've become an advocate for other parents. I have now officially signed up to be parent to parent support. It's parent to parent of Wisconsin, to be a parent support for volunteering my time for advocating for other parents and supporting them. And then I'm working to be a peer parent support specialist and life coach, and just anything I can be out there to do. I have so much in my journey that I want to do, and learning about IEPs and things where I can advocate for other children, other families, parents, speaking up and saying all the things that parents have a hard time saying. I was
Mm.
there at one time myself. So that's who I am now.
Mm. Wow. So, one, I want to invite our audience, please comment as you are called to give Christy some support. Please comment any questions that you have, and we will make sure to, I will be watching the comments and bringing up any questions that come up in the next hour or so. Thank you to everyone who's joining us this morning. So we were talking before we started about, like, your dream of, having a busload of kids really kind of put you on the path to be chosen for this work, right? To be, whether it's a universe thing or a God thing, or, a just opportunity presenting itself thing. How was that for you when this first arose? Like, did you start out being this wonderful advocate that knew how to do everything?
I was completely lost.
Mm.
I didn't know where to turn, and I had family and friends that I couldn't relate to, that didn't understand what I was going through. And in time, I became very isolated and felt
Mm.
alone because it was a different journey than everyone else was traveling.
Right. So when you think back, was there a catalyzing moment or a person or an experience that made you? I think of it like the hero's journey. Our last month we had the amazing Scott Allison on, and he talked a lot about the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is that, sometimes a person is chosen for a job or a huge task that they didn't ask for and they didn't want and they don't know how to do, and they fight it at first, or they, try to avoid it. They try to run away from it. Was there a moment where you can sort of speak to, or remember, that your hero's journey sort of transitioned from that resistance to the acceptance of, this is my job, this is my path?
So, what really kind of kick-started me in this? We were very isolated and really alone, and I felt like I could not connect with other people, because this is a very different journey than most people. And I had gone into a gas station, and I kind of call this woman my little hero, because I went into the gas station and my 2 kids were with me, my 2 younger ones, and they were doing their normal thing, picking everything up, kind of extra hyper and talkative, and putting stuff back down and picking it back up and on to the next thing. And I was like the busy mom all over the store. And the cash register made a comment, or the lady at the cash register made a comment and said, if they were my kids, I would hang them upside down by the toes. And that really kind of triggered me because I just couldn't believe that she would say such a thing to another mother or anyone. And so at first I left the store and I went home and I brought my kids back, and like it just didn't sit well with me, and I felt very shamed, and it just hurt. It hit me really deep. And so I left my kids at home with my husband, told him what was going on, and I really needed to go back and talk to her. And I told her that, you don't know what other people are going through, and that even though my child looks normal, he has some struggles that you can't see, and that in my opinion my kids are being very good. And so I just explained to her, my child has autism spectrum disorder and he's bipolar. And so I just explained to her that, how hurtful that was, and that you shouldn't say things like that to people because you don't know what they're living through and what they're going through. And at that time we were in our crisis, like it was the thick of all thick. It was so awful and hard at home. And another lady that was working heard me talking to this woman. And so when I left, I just arrived at my house, and this car pulls up behind me, and she comes and gives me this big hug, and she says, I have a child that's like yours, and I just want you to know that you're a beautiful mom, and I'm so proud of you for standing up for your kids. And, she gave me a hug. We cried. She was that person that for the first time I was able to like feel that connection and to be heard, for the first time, be heard. So that was what made me begin to want to talk about, what's going on, and realizing that if I don't use my voice, if I don't talk, if I don't tell people what's happening, then no one knows. And we as families are suffering silently until we break.
Mm.
So that was my little hero. That was what began probably, well, that was the reason. That was kind of my turning point.
That is such an incredible story on so many levels. One, it's very well told. So bravo. But also, I know that there are parents out there who would have been so shamed by that it would have had the exact opposite effect, right? That it would have sent them further into isolation, that, it would have made them feel like they couldn't take their children out into the world, that they needed to be separate, right? And I know that because I've heard those stories. I've talked to parents. I've worked with parents who are supporting children with, various types of needs. And their biggest fear is someone saying something like that to them, someone judging them and their entire parenting existence on a tiny snapshot of them with their children in a public place. Are you someone that has always felt comfortable or safe speaking up in that way or confronting people? What did that for you? Where did that come from?
It's this fire to save my child. It was, if I don't do it, who is? If I don't stand up and say, hey, this is happening to my kid, this is happening to other kids, then how does the world ever change if we keep our silence?
Yeah.
So that was what has been burning in me, is this is incredibly hard for me. It's hard for me to sit in front of a camera. It's hard for me to talk about my story. It's hard to, put our very vulnerable moments and talk about really hard things on a blog. And sorry if I get emotional. I'm trying not
That's
to.
Okay. Nope. This is do it.
But it's very hard to have that very raw story out there. And but if we don't, no one knows. And that was kind of where I was sitting, was I'm not one of a kind. I'm one of the very few, because most parents can't talk about the very rawness of what this is.
Right. Well, I think historically what has happened is that instead of, you know, doing what you are doing, and what, we've had some really incredible parent advocates on this show who, Amy Fields, who you really need to know. She's in Minnesota. You two need to know each other. Amy Fields says, I'm not my child's voice, I'm their microphone. Right. And I love that for many reasons, but I think it is reflective of this beautiful shift in not internalizing and then projecting that judgment and shame back onto the child. Right. But instead saying, your foundational people, we, your parents, your family, your community, recognize that your experience of the world is different. And we're not going to shame you for that. We're going to expect and hold people accountable for the way that they respond to you, to make space for you, to allow you to be of the world and in the world and be safe. And so what you did was so much more than just speak up for your kid and yourself, but, begin the process of creating this world that you want to exist, rather than doing what historically, thousands of years worth of, turning that shame inward and turning, keeping our family members hidden from the world. And instead you said, no, it can't be that way. We can't continue on that path. And because of that, you were also seen and you were also validated that, you weren't alone.
Right. And when I began this journey, I had sat down, and that's why I've named myself the Unmuffled Unbreakable Mama. I wasn't so sure how much I wanted to be out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as I started, I realized that I can't hide. There's no why hide. I'm not ashamed of my child. I'm not ashamed of our story. I'm not ashamed of the journey that we've traveled.
Right.
And to be seen, for people to be able to relate to me, I have to be who I am, who we are as a family, and I don't fear this. I want to, throw it in your face. Here I am. So then I came out with my name, and I've just decided that, we're just going to be real and raw. And, I was talking, you kind of made me think about it, but earlier I was telling you when I first started that you have to be, you can't parent every child the same. And I think the biggest growth that I've had through this was recognizing that, every child is different. And when I started out, there's no handbook for parenting. You don't get a parent book. You don't get a child with special needs book. Like, there's nothing there, which would be so amazing if it was. But you kind of have to figure this out on your own. And you have to learn your kids and what works best for them. And so for me, was changing the parenting cycle that I had grew up in and learning how to be a different type of parent. And at the beginning of all of this, I was trying to save my child. I was trying to get the medications he needed. I needed to get the programs that he needed. I was trying to fix him and make him be who I was raised to be. You know what I mean? Like, I was trying to parent him the way I thought he needed to be parented. And there was a day that I had taken him to school. It was 1 year ago, that he sat on the floor and he cried at me and he said, Mom, they're expecting me to be somebody I'm not. And it just triggered me. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is where I've changed. This is the beginning of how we began to change. This is the beginning of our recovery, was recognizing that my child has to adapt in this world differently. And I have learned how to adapt with him. My family has adapted with him, and we've changed to not necessarily walk on eggshells anymore, but to be able to work with him on the route that he needed, the road that he needed, and support him in the ways that he needed support, so that he could live in this world and function just like everyone else. And so
Right.
my journey has been teaching everyone that works around him how he needs to adapt and how to adapt to him. And so that was kind of the beginning of our entire change, and realizing that you have to learn to adapt to your kids. You can't fix them.
And you know, do we want to? Right? Like if
No.
we work what we say, you know, what you resist persists, right? The harder you fight to make someone into what you think they should be, the harder they're gonna fight you to have you recognize that they are who they are. And so, you know, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. The that, you know, that practice of acceptance. Oh, this is the kid I have. Right. And I have found historically, and for myself as a parent, you know, we walk into parenthood with an expectation of being a parent, right? This is how it's going to be, and this is how I'm going to be, and this is how they're going to be, and we're going to do it all different. It's, you know, we're going to be flowy and ethereal and perfect and beautiful all the time, and know how to respond to every situation. And then we actually get into the the job of being parents, especially to multiple children, and go, oh wait, all of that, you know, has to go out the window. And I just have to sort of sit with, what are my values? And when I look back on this parenting journey, how do I want to assess who I was and how I showed up to things as they were? Not, you know, how disappointed was I that things weren't what I thought they were going to be. And so you accepted the reality of the situation. And from there, you know, I'm a person that uses dialectical behavior therapy in my practice. And so I am seeing a beautiful example of both dialectical thinking, radical acceptance, wise mind, you know, all of these wonderful skills. I'm not sure that you knew that's what you were doing, but
Thank you.
but you know, you did it. You said, okay, this is the situation as it is. Now, how do I show up to it so that we can, you know, find some peace?
Right. And I think that's where a lot of parents they get stuck, because you go through the whole process. It feels like you're going through the process, different stages of grievance or grief.
Grief,
You know,
right?
and so when you finally hit that acceptance and realize, oh, this is what works, and then that's when your story turns into. So like, I want to say that my son, I do a lot say that my son suffers from bipolar disorder, but we no longer suffer from bipolar disorder. He's a survivor of bipolar disorder, and we have now learned how to function with it, and it's absolutely beautiful. For an entire year, my son's been able to be into school, and we had missed 2 years because it had taken over his life. And but now he's been able to be in school. He's successful. It's amazing because I can, for the first time, say that we haven't even had an IEP yet this year, and usually I'm there every couple weeks at the school, and like everything, his whole world is just turning. He's turned into this beautiful flower, and so yeah, I want to be able to give my experiences to another family. I want to be able to see someone else grow through what I've gone through. So.
What was the process like for you of getting services in place, getting appropriate services in place?
So we were the family that kind of fell through the cracks. We didn't know where to turn. The school system had no clue. The doctors never pointed us to the right direction. And I had no idea about NAMI and, the Wisconsin Family Ties and all the different resources out there, because why? I don't know why. I just didn't. I don't think I'm not the only parent that didn't. But I didn't know. I didn't know that my county even had resources. And so what got me into that was when we were in crisis and I was making phone calls and calling everyone. And I happened to stumble across a name of somebody that runs the programs in the county. And she says, well, have you ever heard of UCS and CLTS. So those are the programs that my son is in, and they help with, his disabilities that he has. And so that was what got me started in it. But we were already in crisis, and it was really, even though we began to get the services, it wasn't enough. We were in the moment, and what we have, especially in our small county, what we have is not enough for what he needs.
Right.
So
I mean, I think that's, that is the case almost across the board, in our country, is that highly specialized, intensive services are not readily available. They are always, there's always a shortage either of funding or of providers or of access. There is never, I mean, I've now worked in this field in 2 states, that, there's never a through line, right? There's never a centralized point for information. There's, you have to luck out almost in getting the right doctor with the right pediatrician with the right kind of knowledge that, is community minded and aware of services that exist and connected with, with resources, and that knows how to provide education. You have to have, you have to luck out with a teacher or a school system that's particularly aware and conscious. And the smaller the community that you live in, the less likely you are to have those people that know those things. And the larger community that you live in, the less likely you are to be able to access those things, because
right.
there's a huge need. And so either way, what is so valuable is that, parents like you and, so many, speak up and say, we have to pool resources, we have to connect. And because I've worked in, disability support services for many, many years, it is and has always been infuriating to me that parents and family members and individuals, in crisis have the added burden of having to do that, to go out and say, this is the weight of my struggle. I am drowning. Please, give me what I need. Give my child what they need. It shouldn't be that hard. So that's my soapbox. I'll stop talking now.
You feel very unheard. It's a fight, and you feel very unheard, and it feels like an endless circle.
It's exhausting.
It never ends, and every time you get something done, then everything, there's always more. There's always more to do, and like you just can't ever feel like you catch up or get in a good place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I began my journey, researching information about my child was very complicated because, like I said, I'm not the only one, but I'm one of the very few. There's not a lot of families that do talk about the seriousness, the rawness of the situations and stuff. And I stumbled across a blog that a mom had wrote about her child, and she was Liza Long. Have you heard of Liza Long?
I haven't, but we'll look her up and share her blog.
So she too has a child that has bipolar disorder, and during the time of her blog, there was a school shooting, and she had wrote a blog about, she felt like she's that mother, she feared the situation of her child and what was going on, and I am that mother, and so that really kind of just hit me, and in my place at that time, I was also fearing and saying I'm that mom. And this was in 2020 when I started actually when I started my first video on, I think I posted on Facebook, and I was feeling helpless, and I had no idea what to do or who to turn to, and we were in the moment, and the services when you're in crisis are not there. And you know, that was the beginning of like realizing how important it is to talk about these things, because I couldn't even find the resources for myself. I couldn't even find anyone to relate to that understood. Um, and except, those videos that Liza Long had talked about her kid and the struggles that she had. And um, through what I'm doing now, I'm finding out there are so many of us and we just don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So my journey is to keep growing and to keep changing and to be able to talk about those things that everybody has a hard time talking about, and be that mom and help other people find their voices so that they can keep talking too.
It's I've been a professional in that perspective, from that, like, if this individual doesn't get the help that they need, I fear what they will do. Right? I don't know how to, adequately, in whatever limited role, whether it was as a case manager or as an in-home provider, or now as a therapist, an outpatient therapist that, sees somebody an hour a week at most, right? Being in that place where it's like, what do you do? How do you see a need that exists? How do you create the support that the individual needs, that oftentimes either doesn't exist or they can't access, or any number of things. And it is, as a professional, it's a very helpless feeling to be in that position. So as a parent, how do you carry that? How do you manage that, as, like, you had 4 other kids to take care of?
It's very hard. It's very hard. A whole family unit suffers when you're in this place.
Right.
It's traumatizing to all your kids, because for us, it was the violent outbursts and the aggression, that verbal and physical. And I have a very young child, and I have all the way up to 19. And they had to see that. They had to. They've grown up with this. It was years that we were struggling, and it wasn't until I couldn't. It wears you down. It wears you down. This is a 24/7 job, and it wears you down. And it wasn't until I broke, and I literally just could not go another day. I just felt like it was completely hopeless. I was scared. I was scared for him. I was scared for the whole family. And um, to be honest with you, I don't feel like there's enough services for a family in that crisis moment, for that period of time. I think that even now, I mean, I've had a great amount of support through my county, and I love what they've done for me. But looking back, a family really needs more support, and a lot more counseling for the other kids, and just having that person to be able to talk about what's going on. It really affects you, and not only does it just affect them, for trauma experiences, but you're giving that child all your time, and the other children lose their parents. That's what's happened. And you don't have that time and energy to give to your other kids. So they've really messed out on a lot of things in life. It's really hard to face too. Looking back, I feel like there's so many years of my last baby that I don't even remember, because I was needed for another child.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Please don't apologize. Please don't apologize. Thank you for, for being this voice, right? Like, I hate that you have to, and I still appreciate that you do. And this is real. This is real. This is, what happens, you know, when when families are forced to, go it alone. And you're right. There aren't enough supports. There aren't enough opportunities for people to even like get an education or to understand what is happening. I think so much in those early years, so much of like what parents experience is this kind of like internalized shame of like, I must be a bad parent. I must be doing something wrong. What is wrong with me that my child is reacting this way to the world? What is, how am I failing? Right. And so we don't ask for help. We don't speak up initially because it's like, we're supposed to, fulfill this, idealized social mediatized, vision of what a mom looks like. And when we don't do that, it's because, well, I just must be bad. I must be bad at this. And it's hard to admit that. But if we could, kind of release that and say, gosh, I'm just noticing this, and this doesn't look like my other kids. And this doesn't look like what I've experienced before. And sure, maybe there are things that I could be doing differently, but why? And what? And how? And, help me understand my kid better. Help me, know what they need so that I can, have peace in my family. I don't know if that's your experience. I know that, like I have 3 kids. And I, have a kiddo that, has had their own struggles with every member of our family has ADHD, and pretty intensely, and it presents differently in every single one of my kids. And, but one of them also has very significant anxiety and depression. And so, his response to the world was very different than my other 2 kids. And our ability to access services and get him the supports that he needs was also very different. And, I thought for years, well, I just, I must be failing. I must be just like, why can't I be better at this? Is it because I work? Is it because I, can't afford to, put him in every lesson under the sun? Is it because I did this? Is it because that happened? Is it because, and, some of it was me, but most of it was that he needed the world to be different around him. And I needed to stop, hating myself and blaming myself and making myself, the center of the story, and, figure out what needed to be different for him.
That's it. You couldn't have said that any better. That's exactly where I was at. And I ran on the fake it until I make it motto. And I did it until I just couldn't anymore. There was nothing left in me to give because I could never get where I was supposed to be. I could never stand up to the rest of the world. I couldn't make my life any more beautiful because it did not feel very beautiful at that moment. It was very nasty. It was very scary. And I was trying to hold myself up to all these things and using all that energy to be what everyone else wanted me to be, what everyone else wanted to view me as. And it's very tiring. It's very tiring. And when I started fighting against that and just being honest and talking about the very real things, the beginning of my blog unloaded so much weight because it just felt amazing to be able to say, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. This is how hard it is, because people don't understand how hard it is to get these resources, and they look at you like bad behavior of a child means bad parenting, and what have you done wrong? And it's always the first thing that anytime any kind of behavior happens with a child, that's always the automatic is, what have you done wrong? What did you do to that child?
Right.
What's going on at home? And it wasn't the case. We have an amazing family. We function really well with each other. And we just had one kid that needed a little different kind of functioning, and we didn't get that. We we're a loud family. We're very,
Right.
giggly and hyperactive and busy, and he needs that quiet place. And, just different things. The way we function was too much for him. Just learning about all that stuff. So, but definitely don't fake it until you make it.
Right. Exactly.
That's a mistake.
So don't do that.
Be real.
Don't do
Be
that.
real.
In general, right? Like sometimes you have to, if you're going to fake it till you make it in a way that, connects you to the world rather than isolates you from it, right? Like,
Right.
It's scary to do what you're doing right now and to appear like you're confident, which you do appear like you're confident, but I know that it's scary and nerve-wracking, right? And so, I have terrible stage fright and always have, and am basically in a panic every time I do this, right beforehand. Okay. So like, and so the fake it till I make it motto is like, I know that the second I cross that threshold, whatever that is, right? That first minute is me going, and then I go, okay, this is actually all right, and I'm fine. I got to fake it for that first 30 seconds so that I can get to here, get to the connection, get to, actually doing the thing that I want to do. But, the other fake it till you make it is like, I'm going to be over here and I'm going to be totally separate from the world. And I'm not going to tell anyone what's actually going on, and, just white knuckle it until something changes. Except,
well, and because the rest of the world doesn't know how to accept what is really happening. And our first time of coming open and talking about how serious things were at home, it was like a shock to even our family, because we didn't isolate because we wanted to. We isolated because it was triggering. It was too much for him. It was, and these things that family or friends did not understand. And so, you try to be what everybody else wants you to be, because it's just too much. It's too exhausting to tell them what really is going on. And we know that they're not going to understand because it's not everyone else's normal.
Right. Well, and I think that there is that sort of like initial and ongoing, the process of self-advocacy and boundary setting and asking for what you need in the world is not something that, it's not something we're taught, right? Our systems don't operate like that. Schools don't operate like that. You do have to ask, right? But they don't tell you how. They don't teach the process of, communicate your needs, right? Don't expect other people to know what's happening, right? And so what we're taught is fall in line, don't rock the boat, don't make people uncomfortable, don't take up too much space, right? And if you do, then you're too much, and love is conditional for you, right? And so learning as a parent to say, hey, my kid needs this, we want to participate in life, but this is how things need to be in order for us to be able to be there with you. And then those people have to be willing to say, okay, yeah, sure, let's figure out how to make it so that our space includes your child's needs, right? And that's a really scary thing to begin doing. At least it is for me. I don't know about
Yes.
So how did you do it?
I
How
don't
do
know.
you do it?
I don't know. It's that fight, that fight to help your child and to just you have to keep telling yourself one more day. Every day is one more day.
Yeah.
And that really is what it comes down to is every day is one more day.
Yeah.
You can't give up. If I do, then who does he have?
Mm.
Who do these other children have?
Yeah.
What do we do?
Mm.
One more
All right.
day.
One more day. I
One
need
more day.
to put on my glasses so that I can read the comments because my eyes are failing more and more every day. So, Rob Targos is one of our family members, and he's just thanking you for saying things that need to be said for yourself and for others. Figure it out is a great approach to the world. Jill Fox has joined us, and she says, so proud of you, Christy Smith. You've been a blessing to me as I have walked this dark path of similarities, and I hope to be the voice to many someday. So you stepping up and stepping into this space, gives other people the courage to do it. And I mean, that's so much what we're about here is like, I discovered when I first stood on a stage, 8 years ago and said, this is my reality. This is my family. This is our mental health journey. This is myself. This is what it is. And I didn't know, back then people weren't doing that. Right. And I didn't know how it would be received. And what I found out was it was like there was this collective sigh of relief of like people going, oh shit, thank God somebody, okay, so she said it. So I must not be alone. So that means maybe I can say it too. Right. Or I can say some version of that, or I can at least let go of the shame and the fear of this reality and actually start looking at the solving, what's the solution, what's the path to making things better. And it just works. And what I've also learned, and I know that you have learned this too, is like once one person in a family starts doing this, the walls start coming down. All the stuff that we never talked about, all the things that we never looked at, all the avoiding or ignoring that happened historically, people start feeling safer to look at things a little bit more critically and be open to the reality that maybe we weren't all born knowing exactly what to do and that we have to ask for help.
Mm-hmm. That was my biggest struggle is just being able to say I need help.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mom and I'm supposed to be able to carry everything, and I did. I carried the weight of my entire family.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all easier if I just did everything. And letting some of that go and letting go of, the fear of saying I need help was
Mm-hmm.
it was, and it's hard because we're our worst critics. We internally beat ourselves up. And when you can't carry the weight, when you can't do everything that you hope or intend to do, then you really beat yourself up. And so that's where I found myself a lot at the beginning was, why can't I do this? And just letting that go and saying, hey, I need help. And it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to get that help.
Right. Admitting to yourself is the first step, right? Acknowledging that the problem is a problem and
I'm
that you
not
can't do
super
it alone.
mom.
We can't
I
do it
try to be,
alone.
but I'm not.
Well, I think you are. And the way to be a super mom is to have this recognition, right? And to understand that you can't do it alone. You shouldn't have to do it alone. It is not a job that that can be done in a vacuum. Like the best lesson we can teach our children, the best modeling we can do is asking for help when we need it, right? Is building community and feeling like we can be all of our messy, complicated, beautiful selves with other people. That is being a super mom, right? this false vision of, what it means to carry the boulder of the universe on your shoulders all by yourself. That's martyrdom, right? That's not super momdom.
No.
And so you are a super mom because, you acknowledge and accept your own humanity. And, you want to be of the world, and you want your children to be of the world. And that's beautiful. Okay, so we have one more question here, and then I told you that we said you had something to read all the way back at the beginning, and then we just ran with it. So I want to
got it out. It's okay.
Okay, good. I want to make sure that we have time for that too, though. Rob wants to know, how do you approach writing? He says writing is a processing process, right? Rob is one of our wordsmiths. He is an amazing writer and speaker in his own right. But, what, have you always been a writer, or was this just like, I've got to get it out somehow?
I have not been a writer. I've always loved writing. My problem is I'm really terrible with words. I found that when I started trying to blog, I am mildly dyslexic.
Mm-hmm.
And so this really kind of just sucked. But I knew that I needed to do it somehow. I needed to get it out. And I wasn't ready to do the camera thing yet and face everybody. I wanted to face everyone. I just wasn't ready to see myself.
At all. Right.
Yes. Yeah. And so that was where my blog came, because I was able to take the time during my self-care time and just write my heart and what was I feeling. And, I've tried, and I've kind of slacked on it within the last month. And that's mainly because I've got, you have priorities in life. And right now my family needed me a little bit more, but I'm not done with it. I'm still here and I'm still blogging, but it allowed me to have that time during my free time to just kind of put my thoughts out. And I think that it's easier for me to blog too, because when I'm in a moment like right now, there's so much I want to say that I can't just blurt it all out and get it all out there in, X amount of time. And so that has given me that time to be able to say what I need to and hit different topics and not feel like I'm time limited. And it's just kind of been it's my outlet. That's where I put it out there for everybody to kind of read my heart, where we're at, what's going on.
So Rob says he's got dyslexia too, and you are not alone, and you are not alone. And what I keep hearing here is, I think one of the most important lessons in life, in certainly in mental health care, and and managing the messiness, and that is progress, not perfection, right? Like, if we expect of ourselves, and this was my biggest hurdle and continues to be, as a recovering perfectionist with ADHD and a host of other issues, I want things to be as they are in my mind, which is this like perfect this perfect thing that is always shiny, and it can't be. And if I am too firmly or rigidly attached to that perfectionistic idea of things, then I won't do anything. Right? I'll get stuck. And so what you're saying is, at every turn I show up, you just keep showing up. However you are, with whatever you have in whatever capacity. And that is also beautiful modeling, both as a mom and as a human, and as a person who's working really hard to make things better. Like, we have to also be able to rest. We have to also be able to put it down so that we can focus on, other things that demand our attention. So thank you for that reminder this morning, because I always need it. So please feel free to share at this, in our last few minutes, what it was that you came on feeling like you needed to share.
Well, instead of reading this, I'm going to post it on my link. But I just wanted to say that really quickly here. My son at the age of, I keep saying 10, it was 10 years old when it really kind of things went down. 11 years old, his 11th birthday, on his birthday, he was handcuffed and taken into a juvenile system. And so something that I really stand against is criminalizing children. And so this is where my future journey is going to go. And I'm just still trying to, my wheels are all spinning. I'm just trying to figure out where I want to be and how to get there and what organization do I want to join and where am I going to speak and who am I going to be? That's where I'm at right now. But criminalizing children, it really bugs me that my child was having a mental crisis, a mental health crisis, and begging to get help. There's no beds available, which of course it was really bad because of COVID, was when we were really in the thick of things. But it's not got any better because you can't still receive help. Now we're lacking the staff, or there's just so many more people now, or whatever the case be. You can't get the services that you need. When you have a child that is having these kinds of struggles, they have to fit a category to be able to get a bed. They have to be a certain age. There has to be a bed available. And this means families are traveling sometimes across state or to another state or wherever it be. And you have to transport your child to that place. So it's really a big struggle for families. But if there's not something like that available, the next step is call 911. This is our system. And I'm a lucky mom because I live in a community that I know the officers around here. They're beautiful. They work well with my child. Thankfully, it was not extremely traumatizing. It was enough. It was enough. It scared him. And but these are what kids are suffering from. And what I want people to think about is, like, everyone says, why don't you get help for your child? You can't always get help for your child. It's not there. When you're in crisis, it's not there. There's no, resources for in the moment. There's no beds available when you need them, or they're very limited, or it takes hours to get there, or, and you end up with your child being handcuffed and taken to the juvenile system, which then teaches them they're a bad kid. They're growing up feeling ashamed of what's happened, and it's not something that can always help. Not every behavior is because a child is a bad kid. It's because they're struggling from a crisis.
Yeah.
So that is my number one thing, is I am against, children being criminalized. And I hope that through my journey that I can.
It's an incredibly important cause to take up. It's, I am, yes, Carrie says, and it makes them scared to ask for help in the future.
Right.
100%. Yes. They cannot trust that help is available to them. They cannot trust that when they, need it, it will not be traumatic. Right. And that is true for, a lot of, hospitalization in general, especially if you're a kid on the spectrum. Hospitalization can be so traumatizing because those systems are not set up to accommodate for the needs of a person on the spectrum who's also having a mental health crisis. And that has been a huge sort of intersection where there are gaps in our systems. It's a one size fits all situation for everybody, and nobody acknowledges that, like, it needs to be more nuanced. It needs to be, more streamlined and approach different needs differently. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're just fine. I love to hear what you have to say. I never knew that this kind of world existed until I was that mom. And I have to look at children that go through this. They grow up. These children, our children, become adults. They become angry. They become revengeful. They look at the world as, they can't trust them. Who can they trust? And when I needed help, here's where you set me. So then they don't get help. And we have, adults that find new ways of self-soothing. And we ask ourselves all the time in the world, what are we doing wrong? Well,
how do we end up with an opioid crisis? How do we end up with,
right.
such high rates of suicide and violent crime and addiction? And well, this is
Right.
how we end up here. It's not
It
because
begins
people,
with our children.
right.
Yeah.
And it's not because people are fundamentally flawed or our society is bad. It's because people can't get the supports that they need in their community. And we do not no longer live in a place where, everyone is silenced and forced into some sort of box. And, our world is different. Our environments are different. Our brains are different than they were 50 years ago. Right. And we are acknowledging that. Donna Joy says, the system doesn't fit anyone, and it doesn't fit anyone. If you are neurodivergent, if you are, queer or trans, if you are a person of color, if you are, a person with a disability, like at every turn, if you have a specific need or a marginalized identity, you are, you can't get what you need in many cases. Right. And the police should not be the first responders in these situations. They just shouldn't. They're not trained for it. That is not a huge political statement. That is simply the reality that, a child in a mental health crisis needs a mental health crisis responder to help them de-escalate, to help them co-regulate. And that is, it shouldn't be a situation where you have to, live in a small community where and trust all of your officers in order to be able to make sure that that is a safe. And, that leaves a lot of variables, to chance. And
right. Well, and we were lucky. Not every system is the same as ours.
Exactly. And even though so many of the points of, your situation didn't turn out as bad as they could, it was still traumatizing because it wasn't the appropriate response.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, the answer is that we need a smaller, better funded, more nuanced, more inclusive, trauma responsive, conscious, aware system, right? That understands that people are individuals, right? And they need their care to be individualized. I worked as a case manager in disability support services for many years in Virginia, one of the worst states in the country for long-term care supports for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I met so many parents over those many years, like you, who said, I never knew this existed until it was my kid, until it was my family. I didn't know the deficits. I didn't know that, I took for granted that if my child, needed support, they would get it. I took for granted that, if we, had a need, it could be met. And I don't know how to shine a light on. This was the only way that I could figure out, like, how do I let everyone know, right? That, like, there are deficits, that when you need help, like, no matter who you are, unless you're a very, very wealthy person, but even then, cautionary tale was the story of Christy in Virginia, who was a state senator and a very wealthy and powerful person whose son was in a mental health crisis and had a psychotic episode and attacked him and then ended his own life. And that was after a situation where they tried to, get a crisis bed. And they spent 24 hours in the hospital waiting for a crisis bed. None arose, so they sent him home. And this crisis happened. This powerful lawmaker, lawyer, very wealthy person, even in that case, could not get the support they needed for their child. And it ended in the most tragic way. So how do we let the world know that, like, you can't take it for granted wherever you are? And then I promise I'm going to get off my soapbox and I'm going to let Christy go, have her Saturday, and all of you too. Be aware. Speak up in your communities. Get involved in the legislative and advocacy process, right? Ask for it. Say, this is a thing that should be funded and adequately resourced to meet the needs of our children and our communities, through the lifespan. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. My nerves feel better.
Good. Well, you did a fantastic job. What is the last thing? Is there if there's something that I didn't ask, or something that you didn't feel like you got out here today?
No, I don't. I think that you led this in a very good way, and I really appreciate you. I simply ask that if you don't know about me, to search out my blog at uncoveringthevoice.net. And if you're following a situation that's similar to mine, speak up. Let's talk. I'd like to get to know people. So that's what I'm here for.
I just put your website, uncoveringthevoice.net, in the comments. And when we air this on our podcast feed, we'll put all of your contact information in the show notes so that you can share. And Christy, thank you for your courage and your commitment to your kiddo and your family, and to, creating the world you wish existed. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. You did a fantastic job. And I look forward to seeing, the heights to which you will rise.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And we will see you back here next month with our next guest. And I failed. Sorry, because I don't remember who it is, but it's awesome because we have some really awesome guests coming up. I think it might be Deanna Catledge in December. And oh my gosh, is she amazing. So I can't wait to share her story with you and invite you to meet her. So be well and have a wonderful Saturday. Happy Thanksgiving to all those who celebrate, and much love. Be well. Thank you. Woo!